Welcome to our last ReadAloud program of the year for 2011 anyways. But we'll be back second week in winter quarter with more. Today we have some special guests for our grand finale. Brian Leaf and Julia Swanson, who are the Mary P. Key Diversity Resident Librarians, so they're honored guests of the OSU libraries. They have a whole variety of texts that they're going to read from, and I'd like to, if I can, just turn that over to you so you can explain to everyone where you're going to start, what you're going to do.
Hi, so today we're going to read from Democracy in America by Alexis de Tocqueville, and then intersperse that with some contemporary texts that have been taken from various social media, new media content in the American political scene. So it's more of a conversation between some more renowned text about America and democracy compared to some of the more recent thoughts on what democracy is like in the United States. And then this is just as a disclaimer, it's more of things that we found interesting, so it's not to make any sort of political statement, just trying to create a conversation between two types of texts. And to create some engagement among all of us. So I think we'll go ahead and get started.
Whenever the political laws of the United States are to be discussed, it is with the doctrine of the sovereignty of the people that we must begin. The principle of the sovereignty of the people, which is to be found more or less at the bottom of all human institutions, generally remains concealed from view. It is obeyed without being recognized, or if for a moment it be brought to light, it is hastily cast back into the gloom of the sanctuary. The will of the nation is one of those expressions which have been most profusely abused by the wily and the despotic of every age. To the eyes of some, it has been represented by the venal suffrages of a few of the satellites of power, to others by the votes of a timid or an interested minority, and some have even discovered it in the silence of the people, on the supposition that the fact of submission established the right of command. In America, the principle of the sovereignty of the people is not either barren or concealed, as it is with some other nations. It is recognized by the customs and proclaimed by the laws. It spreads freely and arrives without impediment at its most remote consequences. If there be a country in the world where the doctrine of the sovereignty of the people can be fairly represented, where it can be studied in its application to the affairs of society, and where its dangers and its advantages may be foreseen, that country is assuredly America. I have already observed that, from their origin, the sovereignty of the people was the fundamental principle of the greater number of British colonies in America. It was far, however, from then exercising as much influence on the government of society as it does now. Two obstacles, the one external, the other internal, checked its invasive progress. It could not ostensibly disclose itself in the laws of colonies, which were still constrained to obey the mother country. It was therefore obliged to spread secretly and to gain ground into provincial assemblies and especially in the townships. American society was not yet prepared to adopt it with all its consequences. The intelligence of New England and the wealth of the country to the south of the Hudson, as I have shown in the preceding chapter, long exercised a sort of aristocratic influence, which tended to retain the exercise of social authority in the hands of a few. The public functionaries were not universally elected, and the citizens were not all of them electors. The electoral franchise was everywhere placed within certain limits and made dependent on a certain qualification, which was exceedingly low in the North and more considerable in the South. The American Revolution broke out, and the doctrine of the sovereignty of the people, which had been nurtured in the townships and municipalities, took possession of the state. Every class was enlisted in its cause. Battles were fought, and victories obtained for it until it became the law of laws. Volume 1, Chapter 4, on the principle of the sovereignty of the people in America, democracy in America.
The foundations of our nation's strength are of love of liberty and a pioneering spirit of innovation and creativity. These values, inherited from our founders and embodied by all who came to our shores seeking opportunity, have made the United States the most powerful nation in the history of the world. This is Mitt Romney from www.mittromney.com/issues.
At stake right now is not who wins the next election. After all, we just had an election. At stake is whether new jobs and industries take root in this country or somewhere else. It's whether the hard work and industry of our people is rewarded. It's whether we sustain the leadership that has made America not just a place on the map, but the light to the world. President Obama, State of the Union, 2011.
Well, can I answer that? One reason people are skeptical is because people don't answer the questions they've been asked. The $1 trillion comes out of the surplus so that you can invest some of your own money. There's just a difference of opinion. I want workers to have their own assets. It's who you trust, government or people. That was October 17th, 2000, the debate between Al Gore and George W. Bush from George W. Bush.
A great distinction must be made between parties. Some countries are so large that the different populations which inhabit them have contradictory interests, although they are the subjects of the same government, and they may thence be in a perpetual state of opposition. In this case, the different fractions of the people may more properly be considered as distinct nations than as mere parties, and if a civil war breaks out, the struggle is carried on by rival peoples rather than by factions in the state. But when the citizens entertain different opinions upon subjects which affect the whole country alike, such, for instance, as the principles upon which the government is to be conducted, then distinctions arise which may correctly be styled parties. Parties are a necessary evil in free government, but they have not at all times the same character and the same propensities. At certain periods, a nation may be oppressed by such insupportable evils as to conceive the design of effecting a total change in its political constitution. At other times, the mischief lies still deeper, and the existence of society itself is endangered. Such are the times of great revolutions and of great parties. But between these epochs of misery and of confusion, there are periods during which human society seems to rest and mankind to make a pause. This pause is, indeed, only apparent, for time does not stop its course for nations any more than for man. They are advancing towards a goal with which they are unacquainted, and we only imagine them to be stationary when their progress escapes our conversation, as men who are going at a foot pace seem to be standing still to those who run. But however this may be, there are certain epochs at which the changes that take place in the social and political constitution of nations are so slow and so insensible that men imagine their present condition to be a final state, and the human mind, believing itself to be firmly based upon certain foundations, does not extend its researches beyond the horizon which it decries. These are the times of small parties and of intrigue. The political parties which I style great are those which cling to principles more than to their consequences, to general and not to special cases, to ideas and not to men. These parties are usually distinguished by nobler character, by more generous passions, more genuine convictions, and a more bold and open conduct than the others. In them, private interest, which always play the chief parts in political passions, is studiously veiled under the pretext of the public good, and it may even be sometimes concealed from the eyes of the very persons whom it excites and impels. Volume 1, Chapter 10, Parties in the United States, from Democracy in America.